the whole left wing is totally falling apart. Over in D.C., over in Congress, Rashida Tlaib, a rising star of the Democrat Party, has now referred to the Holocaust as a calming event. She not only said that phrase, which is so outrageous, she is rewriting the history of the Holocaust and the creation of the State of Israel. Now, this has nothing to do with investigations of Russia or collusion or whatever. This is just purely the Democrat Party and the ideological left collapsing in on itself. And specifically on this issue of Israel. Here you see two major leftist strategies at play. Rashida Tlaib does them both at the same time. She does the performance of victimhood, and she does the rewriting of history. Both at the same time, both central to the left-wing agenda. Here she is speaking both sides of her mouth about the Holocaust.
And there's a kind of a calming feeling I always tell folks when I think of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust and the fact that it was my ancestors, Palestinians, who lost their land and some lost their lives, their livelihood, the human dignity, their existence in many ways have been wiped out, and some people's passport. I mean, just all of it was in the name of trying to create a safe haven for Jews post the Holocaust, post the tragedy and horrific persecution of Jews across the world at that time. And I love the fact that it was my ancestors that provided that, right, in many ways. But they did it in a way that took their human dignity away, right? And it was forced on them.
So none of that is true. Nothing she just said is true. Either she's a profoundly stupid woman or she's lying. And I don't think she's stupid, so I think she's lying. None of what she just said is true. First of all, this is just a note of rhetorical advice. When you are describing the Holocaust, it is best to avoid the word calming. It's just, of all the many words in the English language, calming is not the best one to describe the Holocaust. Eric Swalwell, the sort of presidential candidate, just did this the other day when he compared Russian election interference to September 11th. Again, another piece of advice, it's best not to compare things to September 11th. You now have two rules for rhetoric. Don't compare things to 9/11. Don't refer to the Holocaust as calming. But then she rewrites history. Everything she said, that the Arabs in British Mandatory Palestine, they welcomed the Jews in. They said, Jews, please come in. Please establish the State of Israel. We like you so much. We want you to be here. They were it's how happy Rashida Tlaib is that her ancestors, the Arabs in Mandatory Palestine, they welcome, except none of that happened. That did not happen. Arabs in British Palestine did not want the Jews to come in. What is my evidence of this? Well, for one, they allied with Hitler. So the leader of the Palestinian Arab nationalist movement, Haj Amin al-Husseini, allied with Hitler. He was living in Germany, in Berlin, from 1941 to 1945. He not only allied with Hitler, he called for the massacre of Jews in the Arab world. He not only called for the massacre of Jews in the Arab world, he did it on Nazi radio stations all throughout Berlin. He called specifically for an anti-Jewish jihad. He then aided the Nazis, because he was friends with Hitler, he aided the Nazis in recruiting Muslims from the Balkans for the SS and for the Wehrmacht. He launched a revolt. These are the Palestinian Arabs. They launched a revolt between 1936 and 1939 to deter European Jews from coming into the region of Palestine. When we use the word Palestine, by the way, we have to be clear. We're not referring to a country called Palestine. There has never been a nation state called Palestine. That nation state might as well exist between Narnia and Wakanda. It is completely imaginary, completely fictitious. There is a region that was named by the Romans Palestine. So when we refer historically to Palestine, we're referring to a region named by the Romans, well after the nation of Israel inhabited that land. So there's Palestine, and then when the British took over the area, there was the Mandate of Palestine. It's referred to British Palestine or Mandatory Palestine. So that's a region, not a nation state. So the Arabs who were living in British Mandatory Palestine launched a revolt to stop Jews from coming into the area, and eventually they petitioned the British to stop the refugee Jews almost altogether from entering the region. Rashida Tlaib completely reinvents that history